On this episode of The Open Road, we're checking out the Jeep Gladiator. So this is the Jeep Gladiator, and this is the Overland edition. It also comes in a Rubicon edition, which is more off-road focused. This one, being the Overland, is the more nice one with the leather seats and things of that nature. So let me show you around. I've got to be honest, when I first saw that we were getting this Jeep through, my preconceptions were basically based off friends who've got them, previous experience, and that movie Clueless. And I just thought that it's probably a bit of a girly car and I'm not really going to like it. Turns out I actually really do like it, and I want to show you why. The thing that's interesting about the Gladiator is the fact that it's a ute. It's got a big proper tray on it as opposed to a wagon. Now, this is trying to either appeal Jeep guys to utes or ute guys to Jeeps. They've kept the styling very classic Jeep, even way back to the 1940s. I've actually got quite a bit of experience with those cars. And I think that people are really going to appreciate that Jeep have kept true to their heritage in style and performance and just overall capability. And we're going to test the capability a little bit later on. So the thing about the Gladiator that makes it different from the rest of the range is the fact that they're offering a full-size tray. Now, as I said, I'm not entirely sure if they're trying to get the existing Jeep community into a ute or offer them a ute, or if they're trying to get you guys into a Jeep. Now, that's going to be a hard task in the New Zealand market, given that this is $89,000 and the Rubicon edition is $92,000. So that's a very, very high-end vehicle to get someone who's coming from, say, a Nissan Navara or a Toyota Hilux. But I guess it's really down to what you like. So let me show you the inside. One of the things I actually really like about this Jeep is the fact that it's got a really high dash, it's got high window sills and a very small narrow windscreen, which makes you feel like you're in a car and it feels like you're really involved and it's this machine that you're a part of. I really appreciate that, and this car does it very well. Other cars that also do that well would be like the Land Rover Defender, the new FJ Cruisers, and Humvees, the H1 Humvees. They also do that as well. It's just a really cool feeling for someone who wants to be involved with the vehicle. Now, the buttons are really nicely laid out. It's very American. The touchscreen on this is probably one of the best I've ever seen. It just is very sharp, it's very clear, very easy to use. The buttons, there are a lot of buttons in the center console and on the steering wheel, and that's because there's very few buttons other places because, as you would know, the doors and the whole roof and everything on this can come off. All of your things that you interact with, like your steering wheel and your gear stick, they all feel very chunky and it's big and it's American. The dash itself is really nice. It's got a nice big center screen and it's got analog dials on the sides. They're all really nice. The seats in this are very nice. This being the Overland edition, it's got the leather and it's all very comfortable. And you can actually, there's a lot of adjustability in the seat height in this car, which I really appreciate. Something that's very American that we don't see in cars, new cars in New Zealand anymore. It's got a cigarette lighter. Who does that? The back seat's plenty of leg room for someone like me, and I'm 6'2" and 110 kilos. So yeah, it's very comfortable for 4 large people and 4.5 people if you got Dave with you. But yeah, no, it's a good time. And then, of course, the whole point of this is that it's a workhorse because it's a ute. But I think without any further ado, we should take this thing for a drive. One of the first things you notice about this Jeep is that it's very, very easy to drive. Everything is effortless. It moves away effortlessly and the steering is effortless. It feels very light and very nimble on its feet. And given its actual overall size, that's actually quite impressive. I don't particularly know how they've done that, but they've done a good job of making a pretty large car feel very, very easy to maneuver. However, that does lull you into a slight false sense of security when you realize you get into a tight car park and you think, oh, I can just throw it around, and then it turns out you've actually got quite a lot of length behind you. That car, you get used to it, but yeah. Something that came up on the social media was, but given how big and long this is what's the turning circle like? It's actually really, really good. It can do almost a 180 in the space of 2.5 lanes, which is impressive given how long this is. Oh, Wrangler. I didn't even look, what a loser. But what that ultimately gives you is it gives you something that's very agile and maneuverable when you're out and about in the sort of suburbia or like this and sort of semi, I guess, not industrial. Wherever we are, it's easy to drive it around. And so that's cool. It makes it a very easy vehicle to get from A to B. So this motor is interesting. It's the Pentastar 3.6 V6, and it feels like a V6. Like, it's got plenty of torque, it's got plenty of horsepower, it's a very revvy kind of an engine, which doesn't sort of seem to sit right in a big truck. Like, you think you want like a big cylinder, big displacement, straight six diesel or something. And that motor is the same for both this Overland and the Rubicon. But yeah, as far as I know, those are the only options for the New Zealand market right now. But it gets up in boogies. Like, as I was saying, when you're driving around suburbia or whatever it is, it can pull away very gently and nicely with absolutely no effort at all. But if you put your foot down, it actually will get up and boogie quite impressively, even to the point where you're thinking about your sort of 80 to 110 passing maneuvers. This actually does that quite well. But actually, a preface for all of the things that we're talking about today is that all of these have been tested unladen. So we're not talking about like towing a boat or anything like that. This one doesn't have a tow bar, so we can't test that, even though we had offers, thanks Harley Boats. But, you know, we've only got so much time with these cars that we just, you know, we do what we can in the time that we have. These stop-start things to get on the motorway are stupid. All it does is moves a problem. If people learnt how to merge like a zip, you wouldn't need these lights. But it does give us a somewhat drag racing effect of having a Christmas tree. So 3, 2, 1. Go Odyssey! Oh, now we can't do a test because this Odyssey wants a race. We would have beat that Odyssey though. But the point that I was going to make is that there is plenty of get up and boogie. It feels very, again, effortless, and it's just easy to get it up and running, and that's cool. Makes it quite fun to drive. Motorway driving in this is pretty relaxed. Something that I like about this car though is you always feel engaged. Like, this has got all of the, you know, the fancy pants radars to do automatic cruise control, and you can literally set that while you're sitting in traffic to 50 kilometers an hour and never touch the brake or accelerator. It works really, really well. But I don't like that, and I particularly don't like it for this car. This car feels like the sort of thing that you want to be involved with at every step of the way. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I do notice that it's a bit wallowy on these kind of like motorways, particularly here in New Zealand where our roads aren't built very well. But it feels a bit wallowy, as most proper off-roaders do, which gives me hope for when we do take this off-road. So, yeah. But again, as I was saying before, because you've got the high dash and the slim windscreen and stuff like that, you really feel like you're inside something, like you're inside this machine and you're in control of it. I mean, I don't know how many of you have driven like a military tank, but it's kind of like that, where you're like in it and you feel robust in it. It gives you a really cool feeling. And I do like that also about the Defender. Like, if you've ever driven like a 90 or a 110 Defender, those give you a similar feeling. The only reason that I would pick this over a Defender is that it's just that little bit bigger. This is considered in America a mid-size SUV, whereas here this is almost a full-size. It's not as spacious as my Land Cruiser, but it's got plenty of space for 4 people and a weekend's worth of gear. I did think that it was interesting, and I did count this, that this steering wheel has 21 different buttons on it. That sounds excessive, but when you're actually driving it, you don't feel like this super busy. It's actually quite well put together. And I would say that that works across the entire interior of this car. There's so many buttons and things that you can do in different places around the vehicle, well, particularly within your cockpit area. And it's all really nice, and it's American, so it's chunky and it feels robust, and like you feel like you could hose it out if you wanted to. I don't recommend that you do, but it feels like you could. Also, this infotainment system, the backup camera on this is the most crisp and sharp backup camera I've ever seen, and that goes for the whole infotainment system. It's really well done. It's really easy to use. There was a little bit of a learning curve at first because it was a different system. I wasn't used to it. I had to find out what buttons do what, but now it's like second nature, and it's actually a really, really great system. The sound system is really good. The only thing I would say is that because of the way that the speakers are laid out, given that you can take the roof off and all that sort of jazz, they don't fire in what I would consider the right direction. So if you're really, really into your high-end audio, it might sound a little bit funny. But for most people, you can play it super loud and sing along to Katy Perry or whoever you like, and you can have a great time. Quick note on economy. I did manage to get this on just regular daily driving down to, I think it was about 8.5, 8.6 litres per 100 kilometres. Not bad, not terrible. I'm still on half a tank now, and I've been driving it around all week, and I haven't had to fill it up, so I'll get back to you on that later on in the film. But in terms of driving comfort, I would say the seats are good. They're not super soft, but they feel good. I feel very assertive in this. Like, I've got the seat quite high up and the backrest quite vertical, and I feel very engaged. And this is kind of what I was saying about feeling like you're really in control of the vehicles. It's a very engaging car to drive, and I really like that. So I thought we'd head out to Mirawai Beach because I like the West Coast, and it gives us an opportunity to drive on proper New Zealand roads, which are actually quite unique from other places in the world. They're undulating, they're not well maintained, and it just gives an entirely different feel. So driving on a typical New Zealand road, what I'm finding with this Gladiator is that, one, I'm definitely noticing the length. Because it's got the back axle so far back, it gives you that kind of kick up like a lot of long pickup trucks do, and it also accentuates how wallowy this is on the normal roads. Now, I'm not saying that either of those are particularly bad things, they're just things that I've noticed. I actually quite like the wallowiness of it, because that basically tells me that this is going to be well sprung once we get off-road, particularly at lower speeds. What I think I need to do is get my head inside like the mind of a Hilux owner or something like that, and see where the comparisons lay between this and something like that, given that that's the kind of area of the market that they're going for. A lot less about sport and a lot more about utility. But the other thing that I think we also need to do is go and try it off-road. And we're at Mirawai Beach now, and that's one of my happy places. Alright, well, I think it's time now to put into four-wheel drive and see what it does. Let's try the low range, see how that feels. It's neutral. There we go. Oh, auto park disabled. Electronic stability control off. Seems like it's just taken off all of the extra bits and bobs to make it safe. Well, that's good. Alrighty. See how low this low range is. Oh, that feels trucky. Still feels very easy to drive, but it definitely feels a bit more trucky now. Oh, the auto lock still works. Oh, this feels effortless on here as well. Oh, we're just cruising along on the torque. Easy peasy. I thought I'd try the low range to see how that goes. And it kind of reminded me that this has actually got an 8-speed gearbox, and it does feel like I'm using all of them. Not complaining, seems pretty cool. So I'm just having a bit of a play around on the beach because I wanted to try the low range to see how it went, but I also wanted to try the high range because it's what you're more likely to go into quickly. And I gotta say, the high range, I'm not loving it. The low range in this off-road is really cool, but the high range, the thing is, when you're in the low range, it turns off all of the electronic nonsense and it just lets it be a truck, a proper truck, and it does proper truck things, and it does it well. But if you have it in the high range, it's got a couple of different like clever modes, and those clever modes are holding it back because you're getting the traction control come through and all sorts of bits and pieces, and it's making it annoying, and I don't love it. And it's much easier to just put it in low range and let it carry on and do its thing, and that's what we're doing now, and it's doing great. I think the thing that's going to be interesting about these trucks in general for the New Zealand market is the fact that these are so popular in the States because they have a huge aftermarket third-party support. That doesn't really exist in New Zealand because we've never really been that into Jeeps. It's always been your Cruisers and your Safaris and things like that. So I think if there's a market for that, these will become a lot more appealing for an off-road thing. But that's not even just the Gladiator, that's Jeeps in general. But yeah, I think there's a lot of scope for a lot of interesting things in this space. And I definitely think it's got the capability to keep up off-road, and that's the important thing when you get in a truck, isn't it? Well, that's been the Gladiator. I gotta say, I've really enjoyed my time with it. It wasn't what I was expecting, and it surprised me in a lot of ways. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Jeep does in the New Zealand market, just because it's got a heritage that is based in the States and there isn't that reinforcement for it here yet. Maybe it'll grow over time. Again, it is a very high-end offering, being at the very top end of the ute scale spectrum in terms of price, but I think it's a really unique vehicle and I've really enjoyed my time with it. So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback, thoughts, opinions, things like that, and we'll see you next time on the open road. Thanks for watching.